Hey, it's Will Elwood here. Thank you for joining me on this week's newsletter. This is, of course, in video format. I'm answering your questions, and this question comes from South Australia. This is from Josia, and Josia says, do you have any suggestions as to how I and others could enhance their or my supposedly innate creativity skills? I believe that creativity in any form is a great enhancer of joy and reward and a life enhancer. And I have to agree. Thank you for asking this question. So, how can we become more creative? How can we improve our innate creativity skills? I've spent some time thinking about this question, and these are my three tips. Tip number one is to live an inspired life. If you really think about what creativity is, if you strip away all the varying definitions of creativity, creativity is about making connections. A creative person is able to make new connections between two or more pieces of information. If you are a problem solver, you are creative because you're able to look at the problem and you're able to move towards the solution. So, what do I mean by live an inspired life? For me, this is about new experiences. I think it's really easy to live life the same way as we lived yesterday, to drive to work the same way, to eat the same foods, to have the same conversations with the same people, to listen to the same music. And when we do this, we're cutting off the realm of new. We're cutting off new opportunities. We're cutting ourselves off from opportunities to make those new creative connections. So let me ask you that question. What does an inspired life look like for you? When do you most feel inspired? Where do you most feel inspired? Is it music? Is it traveling? Is it going to new classes? For me, it's walking in the forest. I just seem to have ideas come to me in that space of quiet and nature. So, tip number one is just to live an inspired life. Give yourself new experiences, meet new people, go to new places, read new books, and you'll start to create new connections. You'll start to naturally become more creative because you're having new input. So, your mind will begin to become more creative, be more imaginative, and you'll have more ideas that way. So, live an inspired life, which I think is just good advice generally for anyone, whether or not you want to become more creative. Secondly, this tip comes from Sir Richard Branson. He always carries one of these with him, a journal, because let's face it, sometimes we become inspired and the creative juices start to flow in the most unresourceful places. It's whilst we're in the shower, it's whilst we're out on a walk. So always have something where you can write. Carry a journal. If that's not practical, have your phone notes with you. I do this when I travel. Ideas will come to me, and I'll just write the notes in my notes section on my phone. That becomes my blogs, that becomes my content for my courses, etc., etc. So always have something with you. And actually, this can become a trigger because when you look at this, and this is quite clever, if you look at your journal and you're always going to be putting new ideas, your creativity into this journal, that can over time become a trigger for creative solutions. So the fact that you're carrying it around with you is going to be a catalyst for more creativity. But in the beginning, just carry it with you and just be open to those new ideas coming to you and be willing and committed to writing them down. The third tip for being more creative, becoming more creative, is to create without judgment and to create often. I know what it's like to sit down to write or sit down to paint, and that voice of judgment is just going, no, this isn't going to work, this has been done before, it's not good enough. All these voices stopping us from creating. Last year when I wrote my book, I reached out to a good friend of mine, a very successful writer, and I said, hey, have you got any tips? If you could give me one tip for writing, what would it be? And my friend George Bell, he said, easy, write drunk and edit sober. And I did. When I was on holiday writing my book, I'd have a couple of beers, and you know what? It actually worked, because when we drink, that voice that judges and criticizes becomes quieter. And I was able to write, and the next day I'd wake up. I wasn't drinking loads, just having a couple of beers, and I was able to edit what I wrote. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to get drunk or take any other substances in order to quieten that voice, but just create without judgment. Sit down and just say to yourself, do you know what? Wherever I'm at in this moment, I'm going to create. And do this often as well, even if it's 5 minutes per day, where you schedule in that time to be creative. Make that consistent. You know, that quantity or the sort of frequency of being creative is far more important than the depth of creativity that you do. You know, rather than do like a 2 week retreat and then do nothing for the rest of the year, just do 5 minutes every day where you sit down and you write, or you sew, or you paint, or you make music, whatever creativity looks like for you. Just create without judgment. You know, park those thoughts. Thank those thoughts for being there. You know, they have a good purpose. Those thoughts are there to protect us. It's scary putting ourselves out there. It's scary to create. I work with a lot of creatives, and they say that fear of rejection, that fear of not being enough, is very, very real and very, very present. So park those thoughts, commit to creating often, create without judgment. And yeah, I hope that tip works for you. I hope all the tips work for you, Jessica. Thank you for watching this. Thank you to everyone else for watching this as well. What are your tips? You know, what's your wisdom? What are your ideas for living a creative life? I'd love to hear. You can leave a comment. You can, of course, share this as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon in another newsletter. Take care.